Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by a big, dark forest, there lived a sweet little girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She was called this because she always wore a red cloak with a hood. She loved to help her mother and was very kind to everyone in the village. One day, her mother asked her to do something very important. "Little Red Riding Hood," said her mother, "your grandmother is sick. Can you take her this basket of food to help her feel better? She lives on the other side of the forest. But remember, don't leave the path and do not talk to strangers." "I will be very careful, Mother," Little Red Riding Hood promised. She took the basket with bread, butter, cheese, and some fresh fruit and began her journey through the forest. The sun was shining and birds were singing in the trees. It was a beautiful day and Little Red Riding Hood was happy. As she walked, she looked around at the flowers and the trees and enjoyed the fresh air. But then, something strange happened. She stopped to pick some flowers for her grandmother. She thought it would make her grandmother happy if she brought a bouquet of beautiful flowers. While she was picking the flowers, she didn't notice a wolf that was watching her from behind a tree. The wolf had a very bad plan. He was hungry and wanted to eat Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. He slowly walked up to her and smiled. "Hello, little girl," he said in a low voice. Little Red Riding Hood was a little surprised but was not afraid. She had heard stories about wolves, but she didn't think this wolf was dangerous. She smiled and said, "Hello, I'm on my way to my grandmother's house. She lives in a cottage on the other side of the forest. I'm bringing her some food." The wolf had a wicked idea. "That's very nice of you," he said. "But tell me, little girl, why don't you walk off the path and pick some more flowers? It's such a beautiful day, and the flowers in the meadow are very pretty." Little Red Riding Hood thought about it for a moment. "That sounds like a good idea," she said. "I'll pick some flowers for my grandmother." So she left the path and walked deeper into the forest, picking more flowers along the way. Meanwhile, the wolf knew that he had to act quickly. He decided to take the fastest way to grandmother's house. The wolf ran through the forest, arriving at the cottage before Little Red Riding Hood. He knocked on the door. "Who's there?" called the grandmother from inside. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf, trying to sound like the girl. "I've brought you some food." The grandmother, thinking it was her granddaughter, opened the door. But when she saw the wolf, she was very scared. Before she could scream, the wolf grabbed her and locked her in a cupboard. He quickly put on her nightgown, climbed into her bed, and pulled the covers over himself, waiting for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive. When Little Red Riding Hood finally finished picking her flowers, she continued on her way. As she walked through the forest, she began to feel something was wrong. The forest was quiet, and she didn't hear any birds singing anymore. When she got closer to her grandmother's house, she noticed that the door was open. She felt nervous, but she walked inside. "Grandmother, are you home?" she called softly. "Yes, dear, I am here," said the wolf, in a voice that was very soft and sweet, trying to sound like the grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood walked into the room. The room was dark, and the curtains were closed. She saw someone lying in bed. "Grandmother, what big ears you have," she said, looking at the figure in the bed. "All the better to hear you with, my dear," said the wolf, trying to sound calm. Little Red Riding Hood was still a little confused, but she stepped closer to the bed. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said. "All the better to see you with, my dear," said the wolf. By now, Little Red Riding Hood was feeling very strange, but she didn't know what was happening. She looked closer and said, "Grandmother, what big teeth you have." "All the better to eat you with," the wolf shouted, and he jumped out of the bed, ready to grab Little Red Riding Hood. At that moment, there was a loud noise outside the door. A brave hunter who was walking through the forest heard the noise and rushed to grandmother's house. He quickly burst through the door and saw the wolf. Without wasting time, the hunter grabbed his knife and fought the wolf. After a few moments, the hunter caught the wolf and locked him outside. Little Red Riding Hood was shocked, but she was very happy that the hunter had come just in time. The grandmother, who had been locked in the cupboard, came out and hugged her granddaughter. She was so thankful that they were both safe. The hunter was a hero, and Little Red Riding Hood thanked him for saving both her and her grandmother. "You were very brave," she said to the hunter. "Be careful next time," said the hunter. "Always listen to your mother and stay on the path." Little Red Riding Hood promised she would always be careful in the future. She learned that it is important to follow her mother's advice and never talk to strangers. After that day, Little Red Riding Hood continued to visit her grandmother, but now she always stayed on the path, and she never talked to strangers again. She learned a valuable lesson. It's important to be safe and to listen to your family. And from that day on, Little Red Riding Hood, her grandmother, and the hunter lived happily and safely in the forest. The end.